When OSHA fines your company $50,000, where does that money go? Does it go to inspectors? Does it go to victims? Does it go to the government? Who gets the money? Where does the money go? Well, in this episode, we're going to follow the money. We're going to get some answers, and I'm going to tell you 3 reasons why OSHA issues fines in the first place. Buckle up. This will be a good episode. It's going to clear up some misunderstandings about OSHA. Let's dive in. Well, hey, friend, my name is David Sawyer. I'm a safety coach. I help busy managers prevent accidents and avoid unexpected OSHA audits. I also help new safety managers go from feeling overwhelmed to OSHA ready. And I want to take a chance, before we jump into the content, I want to tell you about my OSHA audit checklist. This is a free resource that I provide. You can go to my website, helpwithosha.com, and you can access a free checklist that will help you in the event of an OSHA audit. This checklist is going to show you how to prepare your team, how to prepare your company, your management, your employees for an OSHA audit. It'll make sure you got all your ducks in order so that you know how to be prepared. But it will also show you what you need to do if you're in the middle of an audit, how to respond to OSHA, how to handle the informal conference. This is packed with information, and on top of that, there's a video that goes along with it that explains each part in the checklist. So if you haven't already, go to my website, helpwithosha.com, access this free checklist. It will be worth your time, I promise. It'll take some of the stress that surrounds OSHA off your shoulders. Now, let's talk about the money, because this is a question I got just the other day. I was doing a safety training class. We were going over personal protective equipment, and one of the guys in the class asked the question. He said, "Hey, who gets the money?" And we had been talking about OSHA citations, and I just thought, that's a good question. I kind of had an idea in my head, and I thought I was right, but I wanted to explain it. And so I did a little bit of research, and the first thing I want to tackle is the misconception, because there's a big misconception out there, and the misconception is simple. It's people think that OSHA gets to keep it, and they don't. OSHA does not get to keep it. It doesn't go to the inspectors. They don't get the money. It doesn't serve as some kind of bonus for them. The fines are really considered penalties. They're not profits to the OSHA office, so they don't get the money. But the reason this has become such a common misconception is because when you get fined, it's personal to you. It's your money. It's your company. It's your employees. And so there's I feel like you're picking my pocket. You're taking the money from me. And that's really not the way they look at it. They look at it as a fine. And so I want to explain why OSHA issues a fine. There's 3 big reasons. When they go to an employer and they find unsafe working conditions, right? That's their job. Their job is to help protect the employees. And so when they find an employer that has unsafe working conditions, then the first thing they want to do is they want to get their attention. They want to get their attention. And one of the best ways to get people's attention is with their wallet. And so when they issue a fine, it's to get someone's attention. That's the one reason they do it. They want to make sure they got your attention. This is going to cost $5,000. Do I have your attention? That's one of the reasons. The second reason that they issue fines is to force change. Now, I picked that word force intentionally because it's not a suggestion. If you go into a facility and there are no machine guards on the blades and the augers and the rotating equipment that could seriously hurt or kill somebody, when they issue a fine, depending on the severity of it, that's the dollar amount's going to go up. And that's why, because they go, we're fining you $20,000. You've got to get some guards on this equipment. It's serving as a way to force change. If they go in and go, hey, we recommend that you put guards on, might not happen. So it's really to push the issue so that the employer changes the behavior that they've been doing. And the last thing is, the third reason is to deter. Deterrence. Now, what's a deterrence? A deterrence is where you go, hey, don't do that or you're going to get this fine. Don't do that or there's going to be a consequence. Right? I've got 4 kids. And so I think about when I raise my kids, and some kids are easier than other kids, right? I've got one little girl that all I have to do is look at her and she's gonna do the right thing because she doesn't want to disappoint her parents. I've got another little girl that she knows what she wants to do and she's gonna do it. And so we have to use deterrence, where we say, if you do that, there's going to be a consequence, right? When they're little, you send them to timeout. As they get older, you start taking things away. I got a 16-year-old now, and you say, hey, you're not taking the car this weekend, right? Sound like my dad. But there's deterrence put in place because you're saying, look, I want you to go this way. Getting back to safety, I want you to put the guards on. I want you to have a lockout tagout program. I want you to protect your employees. And so I am going to give you a serious violation, a substantial fine if you don't do that. That's what they're aiming for. That's what they're hoping for. All right, so let's talk about, we talked about why there's fines. Let's talk about where the money goes. So there are 2 types of OSHA programs. There are federal OSHA programs, right? There are federal OSHA offices, and then there are state OSHA plans. So just to kind of, and this could be a whole video on its own, but just kind of break it down, and you can punch this in your Google machine and it'll tell you all about the differences. But right now I'm recording this in North Carolina. North Carolina has a state plan. So what that means is when somebody out of Raleigh, an OSHA officer out of Raleigh goes and does a safety inspection somewhere, that's a state employee. And that employee is going to fine people under the state guidelines. Now, the state programs, when the money comes in for them, it goes into a state general fund. Okay? So that's where it goes. It goes into a general fund, and this is used it can be used for a lot of different purposes, but usually it's used to support the state programs and the state OSHA offices. It's used to help with unrelated expenses in the state budget. Could be infrastructure, could be education, could be used for enforcement, but it's essentially the funds are funneled into a state fund of money. So it doesn't just go to safety. It doesn't just go to OSHA. It goes into this fund that's used for state operations. The federal fund, if you fall into federal, then that is going to take the money and it's going in the U.S. Treasury. And that's used for government operations. It's used for national programs. But it's not earmarked just for safety. So, in real simple terms, OSHA doesn't care about the check you write. Believe it or not, they don't. The inspectors, they're not getting a bonus off this. They're not getting anything out of it. So they're not incentivized to write you a huge citation. What they are trying to do is get you to change what you care about so that things get fixed. So hear me out on this. If you get an OSHA citation, they want you to first pay attention, right? Get your attention. Then they want you to fix the problem. And the last thing they want is to not have it happen again. The money that they collect goes into a fund, whether it's a state fund or a federal fund with the U.S. Treasury. It's going to take care of other government programs and other government needs. And I'll tell you, this is kind of a side note, but something I've heard is that when there is a government shutdown, and we're all familiar with that, when the Republicans and the Democrats can't get along, and it doesn't matter whether you're red or blue. I was going to say green, but that's the color of money. No, it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Whatever aisle you fall under, when the government shut down, one of the things that they can always agree on is, hey, you know what we should do? We should raise the OSHA citations, because both of them see that as a way to bring money into the government. So the government does get the money, but it's not necessarily the OSHA inspectors that are getting the money. Now, keep in mind, oftentimes the fine that you receive as a company is not the biggest problem. We have to figure out, as safety managers, all right, I'm talking to you now, safety manager. As a safety manager, we got to figure out, how are we going to fix this problem so that we protect people, we meet compliance, right? We get in line with the OSHA requirements, but how do we make it so that this is consistent? So we don't slide back into bad behavior, because repeat violations are some of the most expensive violations. So as an example, if you have an OSHA inspector and he goes in and he cites you for not having chemicals labeled correctly, and you go, oh man, that stinks. We got chemicals that aren't labeled correctly, but good news is that's a pretty simple fix. We're going to get some new labels. We're going to get some new bottles. We're going to make sure that the chemicals are labeled correctly. Boom, boom, boom. We do all that. We put that in place. Hey, we go back 6 months later, it's working. We go back a year later, and it's starting to not work quite as well. We go back 2 years later, and people go, what are we doing again with chemicals? As human beings, we have a hard time staying consistent. So as a safety manager, when we make a change, we have to put inspections in place to follow up and verify that this change has taken on traction and is actually happening. What you don't want to have happen is 2 years down the road, you have another follow-up OSHA inspection and they find the same problem again. If they find the same problem again, it's going to be classified as a repeat violation, and that's a big, big problem. The other one, and I'm just talking about some expensive ones. Repeat violations are expensive, and so are willful citations. Willful citations is when an employee, or an employer, I should say, does something that they know is wrong, and they do it anyway. And if an OSHA inspector catches that, that one is rough, because you did it wrong and you knew you were doing it wrong. You don't get a lot of grace for ignorance because there's so many educational resources out there. But if you knowingly put your employees in danger, that is one of the steepest fines there is. So just to close it out, I want to remind you, OSHA doesn't care about the amount of money as much. They really don't. They put the fines in place so that employers pay attention, fix the problems, and don't make the same mistake again. Again, going back to my kids, it's like when I go in and just as an example, if I have a kid and he's not doing his homework, he's on his iPad, he's not doing his homework, and I go, you know what, I'm taking the iPad away. Do I take the iPad away because I want the iPad? No. I take the iPad away because I want the kid to do his homework. OSHA, they're not in it for the fines. They're in it to fix it. So the best thing we can do as a safety manager is figure out how do we have a safety culture that is just automatic so that things are getting fixed and getting corrected and staying the right way. It's a challenge. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a challenge, but you can do it. And if you want any more information on this, go to my website, helpwithosha.com. I've got lots of helpful information. Download a checklist for the OSHA audit checklist. It's a great resource that will help you prepare for an unexpected OSHA audit. And until we talk again, do everything you can to keep the people you work with safe, because no one should get hurt at work.